Okay, so my screen is visible. Yes. So yes, hello everyone, and I'm Darshan Deshpande from Life to and Beyond Foundation. First of all, I would like to thank the Hex-Star Universe SS Citizen Science Group for this opportunity, and also our founder and executive director Sibsankar Palit for letting me know about this opportunity. And this is my introduction. Today's topic is space tourism and climate action. So as I mentioned, I'm finance officer of Life to and Beyond Foundation, and I also write the Beyonders newsletter. And our founder Sibsankar Palit is editor of that newsletter. And I am also a volunteer, researcher, artist, and freelancer. And I live near Mumbai, and it's in Maharashtra state from India. And you can scan this QR code to know about my LinkedIn, Instagram, and all other social networking sites. And at the end, I will also share the links, so you can obviously scan here or wait until the end. And now a little word about our organization, Life to and Beyond Foundation. We have collaborated with the Hex-Star Universe and SS Citizen Science Group for this awesome event, and we are really grateful for that. And Life to and Beyond Foundation envisions uh, and this thing that empowering the unsensitized communities in astrobiology, space studies, and its application. So basically, letting people know from different parts of the world about these topics and how these topics are important to them and how they can participate. And we are on the mission to foster ethical R&D, research and development, science communication, education, outreach with an entrepreneurial spirit to venture beyond and save our planet, which is also the theme of today, like climate action. And we are creating space for all. That is, the aerospace industry is not just for scientists or engineers, although we appreciate them. Everybody from arts, commerce, and even students and people from all regions can participate. And as I mentioned before, you can scan this QR code to visit our website or wait until the end so that I can share the link. And this event is a part of Outreach Sarabai, which is an outreach initiative by Life to and Beyond Foundation, and it honors uh, Vikram Sarabhai, who was an Indian physicist and astronomer who initiated space research and helped to develop nuclear power in India. And it involves many online and offline events about space, astrobiology, astronomy, and many more. You will learn more through our social media and website as well. And this is the Beyonders newsletter, which I mentioned. And if you scan this QR code, you can subscribe to the Beyonders newsletter, which has over 1,000 subscribers now on LinkedIn. It gets published monthly, and it is edited by our founder Sibsankar Palit, and initial curation and writing is done by me. It contains space opportunities, astrobiology opportunities, astronomical events, and notifications about conferences and online events such as this one. We actually had climate change as a theme for September 2024 newsletter, and we shared about this event. So be sure to subscribe to that newsletter to know about such events. And now, further, what this presentation is about. Basically, we're going to have an overview and discussion about what is space tourism and its effect on climate change or climate action. We will have a question and answer at the end, and you also have an option to send questions to me after presentation. So before we go, if you haven't introduced yourself, please feel free to share about yourself in the chat. If you are watching on YouTube, you can share in the live YouTube chat. If you're watching the recording, make sure you check out the description. So these three questions: what is space? what is tourism and what is space tourism. I will give you a few seconds to think about these three questions and just let me know what you think they are before I share some basic details about this. Many of you may already know about this, but it's important to uh, get back to basics just to refresh our memory before we delve deep into this. So I think we are ready. So what is space? Basically, space is a common term, and many people use aerospace to refer to jobs for aerospace industry in space companies. And usually, a scientific term would be outer space or simply space. It's that expansion that exists beyond our planet or any planet, and it's out of Earth's atmosphere, and we can see moon and other planets in their galaxy as well. So, what is tourism? As we all know, tourists go and visit different places for pleasure, and that's their main motive for enjoyment, with either with themselves or with family or sightseeing. Now, when you combine both, space tourism, the new term that has risen over a decade. So basically, it you can say accuses people that they are going to space just for entertainment, and uh, on the contrary, it is not so. And I will let you know why it is the case. So the second thing, that's the 50% of this event is climate. It's about climate. What is climate? What is climate change? And what is climate action? I'm pretty sure you know about this, but just think about answers, and then I will share the next slide, and you can check whether our basics are right. In fact, when I was doing research, I came across many new terms and old terms like this. Like, what is climate? Climate is the long-term weather pattern in a region, typically averaged over 30 years. Many people get confused. Even I used to get confused when it came to climate or weather. So now you know what climate is. Now, climate change. What is climate change? So there are two terms, and the first term is well known by all of us. That is global warming. It's ongoing increase in the global average temperature, and obviously because of that, it affects Earth's climate system. And in broader sense, it's having an effect in the long term. And some examples are, North Pole, South Pole, Iceland, icebergs melting, and in regions like India, there are floods when there are rains, and when there should be summer, there are rains. So that's climate change because everything's changing, the weather is changing. Now, what is climate action? Well, the climate action is what we are doing or what we are going to do to make sure that these effects are either reversed or slowed down. An example is goal number 13th of the United Nations Sustainable Goals, because those goals involve, food, poverty, education, and many other different things. So the 13th goal is the climate change, and if you go visit that website, you can learn about different actions that are being taken by different organizations, and how UN is actually making people and nations aware about this. Now, since we are entering into this space topic, I would like to show you the first photo of the blue marble, which is our planet Earth. And this was actually taken by an Apollo astronaut. And this is the reason why we have many people saying that there are no borders from space, and we are on the same planet. And the photo on the bottom is Earthrise, which, according to the nature photographer Galen Rowell, is the most influential environmental photograph ever taken. And the reason is obviously because it helps us to realize that we are on one planet. There is no plan B, as they say. There are no other planets where we can immediately go. We know that there are many entrepreneurs that are thinking about colonizing moon, or you can say a friendlier term, settling on Moon or Mars. But we all know that we need oxygen, we need water, we need different kind of things, such as atmosphere, of course, and infrastructure. So that's not an immediate solution. The immediate solution is spreading awareness about climate change and doing the things that are required. Now, this slide also emphasizes on this sentiment that we are just a small pale blue dot. As Carl Sagan, American astronomer, planetary scientist, and science communicator, mentioned, that there's no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. And when he said that, he basically meant pollution and wars and water drought and human created calamities such as floods because of settlement. So we don't have any other planet now. Now all of us think about space flight, space tourism, and we see these images that appear on different news websites, online, on YouTube, and we often see that they're just enjoying themselves or sightseeing, but that's not the case. Because when I attended a space kind mastermind class, or you can say a private webinar for alumni, one of the Virgin Galactic astronaut, Andy Sadhwani, which is an Indian origin astronaut uh, living in the US, he mentioned that all of the participants had different kind of experiments, whether psychological experiments or experiments about physiology, to observe how zero gravity affects their body. And of course, these are experiments, and various research papers are published based on these experiments. Andy Sadhwani himself has different research papers published. If you search on LinkedIn, you'll see his publications, of course. And that's why during the meeting, or you can say webinar, he mentioned that we shouldn't call space tourists as just space tourists, because they are not just there to see and enjoy, although that's a big part of their journey and passion, but they are also there to do science. As NASA says, science means experiments and observing what happens in zero gravity. And building on this blue marble or the Earthrise is the term that was coined by author Frank White, based in the US, and his excellent book called The Overview Effect: Space Exploration and Human Evolution is quite popular because it explores a different kind of perspective when it comes to space flight. And so Frank White and many people who actually read the book and many people who actually researched that, including the organization Space for Humanity, mentions that going to space makes people care about our planet and other humans. And this thin blue line, this photograph from ISS, the International Space Station, is the evidence of the thinness of the atmosphere. It shows how thin our atmosphere is. We are not having strong armor as the sci-fi movies show a planet having. So there's a big chance of pollution having adverse effect in the long term. So as I mentioned earlier, there are different experiments, different things that people do in zero gravity. The first example is, of course, inspiration for astronaut from the US, Dr. Sian Proctor, who's a space artist who used her journey to inspire others, especially from South Africa and African continent, and every person from the world to dream about space and also to know what it means to actually go to space, because obviously not everyone can go to space, South Asia or Africa. But there is a chance, and I'll let you know in a future slide. And there's an opportunity for all of us. Now, the second example is the Rubik's Cube is a popular toy, or you can say puzzle, that's quite popular for many decades. And this Rubik's Cube was solved in 19 seconds during a zero gravity flight by aerospace engineer and analog astronaut Bailey Burns, also based from US. So what it does is it shows that such experiments and such psychological puzzles can be solved in zero gravity, and the effect of zero gravity on brain and different kind of experiments can be done. And on the bottom, you might have seen that photograph of playing violin in space. In a recent September 2024 mission of SpaceX by Sarah Gillis, she's a crewmate from SpaceX Polaris Dawn, and it was quite popular on the internet. So if you can see, it's not just science, but you can try different things in zero gravity, and it all makes sense, as I will let you know in future. So making space for all, as I mentioned, there is a movement to help many people experience zero gravity and space. So Astro Access is an organization from the US that's helping differently able professionals and people to get scholarships so that they can experience zero gravity. These are actual zero gravity flights. They are not rocket tickets, but they provide you with a brief zero gravity experience, and they help differently able people to actually get scholarships so that they can experiment, they can experience, and they can also get this overview effect because they are in a flight. And then, as I mentioned, Space for Humanity Citizen Astronaut Program. You can apply regardless of your citizenship, regardless of your age, to this awesome space program. And Sarah Sabri, she became the first Arab woman and the first woman from the African continent to go to space thanks to that space application. Because obviously, we all know that space tickets are quite expensive because fuel and other things are involved. So what this Citizen Astronaut Program does, it requests your basic information and an essay and answers to various questions, and they assess how much impact you will make if you go to space and return. And she has inspired her community, she has inspired her continent because she was the first African woman and also Arab woman to go to space. So you also have a chance. You can Google Space for Humanity, and you will see on their website that applications happen every year, and you can subscribe to their newsletter as well to know when the applications happen, because it's a short and everyone should get a chance at that. Now, getting into a difficult point, as a space enthusiast, we all hate to know, how rocket launches and other space activities are affecting the climate. So some data from popular and authentic sources show us that carbon emissions from 40 million flights in 2019 accounted for 911 million tons of emissions, or you can say carbon dioxide, CO2, as per Science Daily. And then there are rocket launches each year, and rocket launches use different kinds of propulsion, and propulsion is the fuel or the method by which a capsule or a rocket goes to space. And the most common is the rocket propellant one, and it it also affects the climate because 1 gigagram or 1,000 metric tons of black carbon is sent into the stratosphere, as per BBC. So we might think that why I am mentioning planes or rockets right now, because why I have this image of a man or a woman or anybody looking at sky. How many planes do you see in the sky? Quite a lot. And how many rockets do you see in the sky? Quite rarely, right? So this is the data. Global orbital launches in the year 2023 were 223, as per SpaceWorks Enterprises Incorporated, an aerospace company. And in 2023, the same year, there were 16.3 million flights of airplanes, according to the US Department of Transportation. Now, they didn't mention that it was only in the US, but let's assume that it was only in the US. So you can expect that international flights must have been many more. And according to IATA, a very popular and very it's a very strong brand in aerospace, International Air Transport Association. We from South Asia also know that you can do IATA courses, you can also work as an intern and do different kind of things. So that's an authority. And according to that authority, international traffic in 2023, that is aeroplanes, climbed to 41.6% versus 2022. And the reason why they are mentioning a percentage, because during outbreak of 2020, we had ban on lots of transportation, which included aeroplanes. But now, according to IATA and different news websites, this is changing, and we are actually getting back to the level before the outbreak. So that's a concern for climate activists as well. So here's a relief for those who are interested in space, and this will bring a smile to your face, because space is actually trying to fight climate change. And as we all know, reuse, recycle the term. Now we are actually using that in rockets. As you can see, the Virgin Galactic VSS Unity, the space plane, as they say, is a reusable space plane because it goes into the atmosphere, and then inside that cockpit they experience zero gravity, and then the plane, after a brief zero gravity phase, it enters back on Earth. Such a difficult thing, but they actually did it. So kudos to their engineers. And then we have Blue Origin, New Shepard, and you can see that on the top there is a cockpit, and only the bottom side having the propulsion is then discarded, but the top side is then reused. And you can see all those space participants are astronauts, actual astronauts, or space tourists, if you're not liking the term astronaut. They actually return to planet using the same cockpit. And then the SpaceX Falcon 9, a very popular rocket, always in the news, is also a reusable rocket. And as per different sources from Wikipedia and science and space sources, these are all reusable. Now we all know that the fuel is a problem. The fuel is not only a problem for climate, but also for you and me, because fuel is the reason why these tickets to space are so expensive. Fuel is the reason for the criticism on aerospace industry. But the work is going on to make sure that the fuel is not affecting climate and weather as much as the original rockets from NASA actually did. And the different kinds of fuel are used now in Blue Origin and different kinds of space launches, especially commercial space launches. And then on the bottom, you can see Orbit Fab is a Colorado US-based company that does refueling of satellites. So what happens is, if a satellite exhausts all of its fuel, it has to enter back into the atmosphere to be discarded, or then it just gets suspended in space. So that causes a lot of space debris. The term space debris is basically unusable rocket parts, satellites, or anything, even asteroid parts, rocks, and even different sorts of chemicals in space. So that's pollution for our planet's atmosphere as well. And the reason for this refueling is to reduce this space fuel the pollution. And this is a progress. And hopefully, every nation and every organization, the private organization, will also uh, get used to these refueling and reusable instruments, reusable satellites, reusable rockets. And when it comes to nations, we all know that different nations have different politics, different regional politics, and we are seeing different wars right now. And as we know, wars use different kinds of weapons, and they also cause a lot of carbon dioxide CO2 emissions. And the biggest concern is that nations aren't required to report their military climate pollution under the Paris Agreement. So those who actually report, according to Scientific American, uh, those who report that 150 million metric tons of CO2 was emitted in the atmosphere during the recent 2023-2024 Russia's war against Ukraine. And this is a big concern. So the less wars we have, regardless of the region, the better it is for our planet, for humans as well as our climate. And as I mentioned, the overview effect creates anti-war sentiment because we see each other as humans and we don't see each other as people from different nations. And if you ever visit different conferences, or even now you're joining this international webinar, you see each other as participants in this webinar. You don't see each other as different nation people. You just see each other as someone who loves space and who are together for space. And this sentiment was uh, also shared by the cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin from the then USSR, before the fall of USSR. He went to space. Yuri Gagarin was the first human to space, and that's why we celebrate the Yuri's Night in April. And what he said, his exact words: orbiting Earth in the spaceship, I saw how beautiful our planet is. People, let's preserve and increase this beauty and not destroy it. And on the bottom, you can see Ukraine, the Ukraine. That stamp is from Ukraine, and it was a stamp from almost 10 years ago, 2011, before this situation with Russia. So Ukraine also celebrated Yuri Gagarin. We all know Ukraine was different than Russia, and Yuri Gagarin from Russia, but then it was USSR. They were all combined. But Yuri Gagarin shared the thoughts that are very true for any national person, and that's why Ukraine celebrated that. And I'm pretty sure Ukraine still respects Yuri because he was truly an international person, in the same way Albert Einstein or Sir Charlie Chaplin's are. Now, again, space unites the world, and despite this ongoing war, we can see Russian cosmonauts on International Space Station. By the way, cosmonaut is a term used by Russians to describe their astronauts. Astronaut is common word used by the US, UK people. Vyomnaut is for, of course, Indians, and taikonaut is a term used by the Chinese people. And on the bottom, you can see in the circle, this is an emblem of International Space Station. And on that emblem, you can see the logo of Russia alongside Germany, Japan, Canada, the USA, which shows the sentiment that all nations are together in space for science, for cooperation, for research. And the reason why I added this star link on the bottom is showing you how space is helping to end war and bring peace. Starlink is a space satellite-based internet service by SpaceX. If you browse through Twitter and news, you already know about this. But Starlink actually helped Ukraine to know about different soldier positions and different kinds of tactical things, so that they can have a good resistance against the Russian aggression. So in a way, it can to help. He can help to end the war because Ukraine will resist the aggression, and then hopefully, as I recently heard from news, that even Russia is ready to end the war soon. But we all know that it needs some time, it needs some discussion. So space can help to further this discussion. And this is a personal experience. And I am being from Mumbai. I visited the NCPA, the National Center for Performing Arts at Mumbai on September 11th, 2024. It had the BRICS Universe photo exhibition where there were photos of different BRICS cities, as you can see in the photograph. Behind me, I'm on the left. I'm on the left, and on the right, you can see cosmonaut Sergei Kudryashov. We are standing in front of the gateway of India from Mumbai, and that photograph is taken by a photographer on our planet Earth. And on the left side, you can see a photograph taken from cosmonaut Sergei or Ivan Wagner, the second cosmonaut. What they do is they take photographs from International Space Station, and in this exhibition, it showed us how the cities looked from space. So what he shared during his presentation, we had a presentation before the inauguration. He shared that as a cosmonaut, as someone who went to space, he wanted to share that from space there are no borders visible, and we get reminded that we are all humans, and we are all here on one home. He also shared videos where he was seen cooperating with astronauts from the US and Japan. So you can see that cooperation is possible on the International Space Station. And this cosmonaut is from Russia, and despite that, he wants peace. And from the news, we can see cooperation between space agencies despite the ongoing war, because science and research has to continue regardless of whatever is happening. As we all know, during World War II, computer was invented by Alan Turing and Manhattan Project, and Albert Einstein was also from that era. And on this slide, you can see the poster from World War II, which also emphasizes the importance of recycling. And all these metals, everything is very helpful for us, because the more we recycle, the less we have to dig for different fuels, different metals. And that's my point, that sustainable space tourism will help to promote awareness about climate change and climate action. And communication, outreach, and education are important. And this webinar, hosted by Hex-Star Universe, SA Citizen Science Group, and Life to and Beyond Foundation, and World Space Week, is one of the important things to spread awareness about this. Now, science technology is definitely helping climate change, and when it comes to science, space technology, especially the satellites, are helping us to know different weather events such as tornadoes, as we see from the weather forecast. And there are technologies that show wildfires. The wildfires are very extremely dangerous things and very underrated, because recently, last year, I saw in the news that many forests were burned because of this wildfire in Canada. And the smoke actually went to the US, and it was quite an alarming situation. But we can avoid all of this if we utilize space technology and these satellites. So my conclusion is that space can unite the world and make us all care about climate change, and actually help us to plan different things, and actually make sure that we are actually implementing what the United Nations sustainable goals are trying to tell us. Sustainable rocket launches and space missions will definitely help. And when it comes to sustainable rocket launches and space missions, I would like to share that, like I mentioned, these Asteroids, not everyone can go to space, of course, but you have option of being an analog astronaut someone who actually experiences how it feels to be on other planets on Earth. And you can actually experience this zero gravity flight through different simulations. And some simulations are also computer based simulations which are accessible to every person on this planet, and they are quite affordable and sometimes also free. You can read books, you can also surf the internet to know more about how it feels to be in space and what it means to actually have this overview effect. And then you actually can care about space and climate change at the same time. You don't have to be a climate activist uh, and just hate space. You can actually be a space fan, and you can also be a climate fan, or you can say space and a climate activist at the same time. That's why on this slide I mentioned that from climate versus space, we need to be climate and space. They go hand in hand, they go together, because as I mentioned, the space technology supports climate action. And if the climate is there, only then we will survive and we will go on different space missions. And if we are also united, and only then we can do more research. We can also utilize our time for better things than trying to destroy each other for a territory or resource. And of course, when it comes to resource, we can recycle, reuse on different level, on our individual level as well, and on the level of space agencies and satellite agencies, so that the use of fuel is sustainable. And like I mentioned, the key takeaway is, if we cannot stop planes from flying, we shouldn't expect rockets to stop as well, because both are important. Aeroplanes provide us with traveling, essential traveling, because we have people going for business, for jobs, to different countries. And then we have rocket launches to send satellites. Satellites are used obviously for internet, for cable, and different uses. And when it comes to people going to space, the reason for people going to space is we have to research, we have to develop, and we have to make sure that in future we can actually study aerospace from a perspective of an Earth citizen, as someone who's having a broad view of our world, and someone who actually thinks of each other as siblings instead of thinking each other in terms of nationality. And the reason why this is important is probably because all of you already know that many space companies, even countries, are looking forward to going to different planets and different satellites like moon, natural satellites, I mean moon. And because the space on our planet is not enough, and along with that, the climate change actually accelerates this sentiment that we need to find different planets, just in case the planet Earth becomes unsustainable to live. But that's just, I think, 100 or 200 years after today. If we don't save our planet, if we don't want that kind of plan B, we need to make sure that we care about our planet. We need to make sure that we care about sustainable space and sustainable space flights and sustainable space travel. And of course, space tourists are doing science, and because the reason why they're doing science is because they went through different trainings, and they have a purpose. They have paid a huge price for their tickets, and they want to publish research papers. They want to talk about how they felt, and that's why they want to utilize their space flight in the best possible way. And there is a prediction that with innovations in fuels, there is a chance that these space tickets will become almost like aeroplane tickets after 50 years, in the worst case scenario, after 50 years or 100 years. In the best case scenario, we might be able to go to space in 10 or 20 years. So thank you so much for this time, and I will now allow question and answers because I'm pretty sure many of you might be having different questions. So I will be happy to answer them. And again, you can scan these QR codes, and then you can visit our website from the left QR code. Then from the middle, you can join our WhatsApp community, the WhatsApp community of Life to and Beyond, to know about different updates, different space events such as this one, and of course, to stay connected, uh, please check out my email on the right. The email of Life to and Beyond Foundation is on the left. On the right, there's my email, just to make sure that Life to and Beyond Foundation don't get spammed with all the questions. You can send your questions to my work or my dusd.work email as well. You can connect with me by using this QR code. You will see my LinkedIn, Instagram, and everything there. So yeah, thank you once again, Hex-Star Universe and SA Science Citizen Group, Life to and Beyond Foundation for this opportunity. If there are any questions, please let me know.
Hello, can I directly ask question with voice? Oh my gosh. Uh, Hi. Hold on.
Hello, Adriana.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry. I have. Wait. Um, I cannot hear my voice. I'm sorry. Now I can hear clearly. So I'm Adriana. I'm a social student from Indonesia. So I started to like science and everything related to space in the last 3 years, and I started to learn it little by little. And now I'm glad that I've joined this meeting, and I'm happy that there is a the topic related to space travel is like it's not a dream anymore. So, and I'm happy that close to my place here. I'm studying in the United States right now, and Colorado is close to my place here, and I went once. I just want to share that once I was in the social classes, and I talked to my professor that when we are in space, we will see this planet as a one society. We will not have borders like you said before, and uh, and sadly that the response from my professor said that. We are not in the planet right now. We are on the Earth, so we have to be realistic. And I'm just silent because I couldn't reply her, and I didn't understand science and rock at that time. But I'm glad that now I know now that they have a clear from you that we have to like we have to share this idea to many people that we are in the same planet and we need to do something good for this planet when and I just want to share my thought about that, and I'm really glad to join this meeting and with this view, and it's very strong view from you. Thank you. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your candid thoughts, and I hope that your teacher, your professors, will be able to understand soon. You can definitely share resources like the overview effect, and of course the YouTube recording of this session and other sessions also, so that they get educated and entertained by these webinars. And keep up the good work, Adriana. Be sure to join our community, subscribe to our newsletter, and stay connected with Hex-Star Universe and SA Science Group. This is a great step taken by you to join this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see one question by Miss Bharti Kaushik. What is refueling in space science and technology? So refueling is basically fueling the tank. When it comes to satellites, the satellites require fuel in order to keep going. They have to continue orbit our planet, and in order to orbit, they need fuel, because without fuel, they will not be able to have a direction. in the same way the rockets. And the reason why they need fuel is if there is no fuel, they will just be suspended in space like a rock that's only there in the atmosphere, and there is no wind or anything. So that's why if you see on the bottom, you can see one square approaching the satellite, and then there is an exchange. Some actually exchange that fuel tank. um, However, what some companies do is basically if that fuel tank is empty, they just utilize their machinery to add fuel to that tank, so that fuel tank is refilled again, and then the satellite can become uh, workable and accessible again, because the access is also lost if the fuel is lost, because each satellite has to convey communication with corresponding nations and companies in order to transmit the data. So, by doing that, if a satellite remains in space for a longer period of time, there will be less need of sending a replacement satellite to space. And in order to send replacement satellites, uh, these nations nations such as US or European nations such as ESA have to rely on somebody, some space agency or space organization, in case of ISRO, Indian Space Organization, to actually send those satellites to the space. And as we all know, India is one of the nations that gets relied upon when it comes to sending satellites, especially after the Russian and Ukraine war, because Russia also used to send satellites in space, but now many nations have decided to, uh, because Russia has been sanctioned, or just because they wanna take side of Ukraine, they make sure that they send their satellites to India. So whenever we are sending satellites to space, we are also using fuel. So that's also a problem for our climate. So if we refuel our satellites, we don't have to send satellites again and again. So this is one of the movements, you can say, that is going on in the aerospace industry, that just like rockets, we also need to make sure that these satellites continue to be operational in our atmosphere, instead of becoming a space debris, or you can say just a junk that's floating around our planet. And in fact, there is a rising concern about space junk, because there are lots of unused satellites, and even the different sorts of asteroids. As I mentioned, the junk is a lot, so refueling satellites will definitely help in reducing the space junk. Thank you for this interesting question. Thank you. In the chat, I have shared some links related to me and also Life to and Beyond. And as I mentioned, if you want any link or reference, or for any sort of answer to your question, you can definitely email me and I will share that resource with you. Yes, I think I saw a hand raise. If that was by mistake, that's fine. If you are watching from YouTube, definitely subscribe to Hex-Star Universe, and thanks again Hex-Star Universe and SA Citizen Science Group for this live stream, so that many more people get to know about these different sessions and these ideas, because I really enjoyed yesterday's session, as well as how a person can become a citizen scientist. And I thank you for touching up on these climate action and space tourism topic, because there are lots of misconceptions. Even I had different misconceptions, but after I started working in space industry as a volunteer, as an intern, and did my own research, I came to know that it's not true that space is harmful for climate, and but it's actually very essential to spread awareness about climate action. Definitely, like I mentioned, there needs some work for uh, inventing new fuels and different kinds of reusable things. But definitely, space tourism is not all bad. But of course, like in every aspect of our life, there's scope for improvements. And I think by spreading awareness about these possibilities, many of you will become future scientists, future professionals who will drive these changes so that our planet becomes more secure. And of course, you will enjoy the process because space is exciting. And the reason why many space tourists seem to enjoy their ride, and the reason why many climate activists are so angry is because they are happy, they are genuinely happy, but they are not just happy, and they are not just there for happiness. As I mentioned, tourism is only for happiness, but they are there not only to gain happiness, not only to fulfill their childhood dream, but also there to experience this overview effect and then share this experience so that more and more people can see each other as humans, and more people can benefit from their research paper, whether it's about technology, whether it's about how human body reacts to zero gravity, and many other different things. So hopefully, these different initiatives and these different steps can contribute to united and contribute to a big plan that can help us to make sure that climate change is reversed or at least slowed down, so that we can have ample amount of time to make sure that there is a plan B for Moon or Mars. But hopefully that will not happen. Yes, are there fuels to resolve? Okay. The question by Miss Bharti Kaushik is that are there any fuels to reduce carbon emission? So, as I mentioned, the Blue Origin is actually working on the fuel that is actually helping us to reduce the carbon emission. And when it comes to different fuels, the traditional fuels that are used are not very good when it comes to carbon dioxide emissions. In fact, there have been lots of different research papers about this, and one of that is refueled. I will share the link in the chat about the research paper. So the research is definitely going on about this, and Blue Origin is actually using that kind of fuel, and because their fuel is oxygen-rich liquefied methane fuel stage combustion, and it was developed by private and public funding. But definitely there needs more work on that. Thanks again for your great questions, and thank you for this. Yeah, Sunita Williams got stuck in space, and that's one of the rarest cases. And the reason is, even if you get stuck in space, because of our advanced technology and different space launches, as you might have also seen in the news, there have been some missions and plans to actually help her to get back to Earth. But then, in a recent news, I have seen that Sunita Williams has been given a command of the ISS, International Space Station, but that's her bravery, because she has utilized this situation to help the science and experiments by going to the ISS and becoming a commander there. The space tourism will not be affected by this, because after the Challenger uh, incident, as we all know, astronaut Kalpana Chawla and McNair and many different great people were affected by their families were affected, and they passed away because of that incident, the accident. After that, there have been a lot of safety measures, training given to astronauts, and different kinds of tests. And if you check the news, many rocket launches are cancelled because of bad weather, because of some fault. Even one rocket launch was cancelled because there was leakage from the rocket. So there are many different kinds of safety measures taken there. So whatever happened with Sunita Williams is quite rare, and if you observe, she is safe there in space. Um, and the reason why she wasn't brought back to Earth was also because of her safety. We want to make sure that she reaches to our planet safely, and that's why she will definitely return. And she's utilizing her time to experiment more, and also just show us that even if some sort of accident like this happens, it's not going to be fatal anymore, because we are always constantly being careful about who to send to space, and which vehicle to use, which rocket to use, which fuel to use. So, and of course, the primary reason why space tourism will never die is because we all want to go to space. And this is why nobody will say no if they get a ticket to go to space. And like I mentioned, you can uh, to go to space by applying to Space for Humanity. And Space for Humanity has this citizen astronaut program every year. And two astronauts, who one was teacher, one was the person I featured here, Sarah Sabri from Egypt. They both were people like you and me. They were trained, of course, before they went to space. But if they can go to space, you and me can also go to space. So definitely check out their website, and also apply to be an astronaut. And if you are from science, of course, even if you are not from science, make sure to check out all the opportunities. Always stay connected with Hex-Star Universe, SS Science, Citizen Science Group, Life to and Beyond Foundation. Also subscribe to our newsletter, and also stay connected with people like me and everyone from this webinar, so that you get to know about opportunities, because you never know uh, how many advancements, how many new programs are there. You might get scholarship to be an analog astronaut. You might also get a space ticket in future. If you remember the Dear Moon mission, which was cancelled because of the safety reason, such missions are also possible in future. So you never know. Always be very hopeful, and be sure that even if you don't go to space, you can at least aim for the star. And star is the space industry. If you get to work in space industry, it's an exciting field, and you will really enjoy it in the same way you enjoyed this webinar. You're most welcome, Ms. Bharti Khushi. Oh, very interesting question. Out of solar system, it is indeed possible, but as you might have seen in news and different science fictions, it will require a lot of fuel, and also a space vehicle like a rocket that's very powerful, and that will actually sustain the time it takes to get us from this solar system to the next solar system. And that space rocket also has to have enough space to occupy the fuel in order to get that person out of the solar system. Because if you don't have fuel anymore, you will be suspended in the space. You will not be able to return. So the most probable thing is that it will take at least like 100 or 200 years, unless there is some innovation, and we can do these things step by step. For example, we can first go to moon, then we can go to Mars, and in such steps we can hopefully make it out of the solar system. uh, and we are actually going out of solar system. It's just that humans are not sent out of the solar system yet. We are actually also considering robots to actually go to Mars, moon. And yes, at least yes, it is still possible, and definitely it's possible. It will require a lot of different research, and as I mentioned, enough fuel and a very powerful rocket to go there. And we also have to make sure that the person who actually goes out of solar system is safe. And like many people have said, that the trip to Mars is a one-way ticket, because there is no guarantee that the person will return. Who's ready for that? I've seen such tweets, and many people do think that it's a very different kind of experience. It's like, sacrificing yourself for your dreams, or making a name for your family. But I personally think that a person should be able to return, even if that's like 10 years or 20 years. Hopefully this science and technology will advance so that a person can make a return trips to moon and Mars, and it's not just one way ticket. And all of this research, and the research that you are doing, we are doing, everything helps to eventually make sure that that dream becomes a reality. Yeah, that's also a good point about fuel. Definitely it needs research in the area of fuel, spacecraft, and also human training. Like if a person is traveling for many years, that person also needs good training when it comes to also the resource management, like how that person is gonna eat. In the same way, the people are on the International Space Station, they have to manage their resources well. And in the same way, you have to train on the analog astronaut missions. Analog astronaut missions also train you to manage your resources in a way that is similar to being on International Space Station, which I share like analog missions. The analog mission is basically a simulation of being on a space station or being on a moon or Mars. There are analog missions on in the US, like you have also in the Europe, like lunar race mission is there, and different analog missions are also popping up different parts of areas, like Habitat Marte is there. So yes, you can definitely think that that kind of research is also helping us to prepare for these space missions. And the US analog missioning high seas, and that analog mission requires you US citizenship. But definitely look for analog missions in your area, in your region. And there are some online analog missions as well, where you can actually experience how it is as an astronaut, and how difficult it is to manage food, water. And they also have to utilize water in a way that they have to bath less, and being very careful about how they sleep, how much exercise they do, because they have to manage their energy as well. You are most welcome. They are great questions.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
once again
much.
for this opportunity. Thank you to dear audience, and all the best for your future endeavors. I hope all of your dreams come true at Astra.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.